you'd like to hear from me, Grace. I'm glad to see you all there. I'm always worried about addressing a gathering of ophthalmologists because I'm afraid I'll make a spectacle of myself. Still, it could have been worse. I'm reminded of the story of the realist painter Salvador Dali and his ophthalmologist. Dali's ophthalmologist told him he had a severe eye problem and would go blind without surgery. The great painter was horrified, with no choice. He placed himself in his doctor's care. As a leader in his field and with great dexterity and enormous skill, he operated on Dali and restored his vision. Dali was so pleased that he not only paid the substantial fee, he painted a portrait of the ophthalmologist set in the middle of an enormous eye. The doctor looked at it a little bemused and said, "Thank God I'm not a proctologist." No, as I said, it could have been worse. These are hard times for everybody. The coronavirus has laid us all low and locked us all down. That's pretty hard for someone in my profession, which is politics. Social distancing is impossible for a politician. You know, we thrive on crowds, on pressing the flesh. And you can't win 2 votes from 3 meters away. But now each handshake requires 2 squirts of a sanitizer. Or you wash your hands and you have to sing happy birthday twice while washing, even though you're not happy and it's not your birthday. But we're moving on, and even if webinars are not always a substitute for directly being in touch with people. You know, the main difference between ophthalmologists and politicians, you come across people with no depth perception. I come across people with no depth or perception. Anyway, unemployment ophthalmologists are also affected. In fact, an attractive young lady told me she goes to the eye doctor just to be alone in the dark with a man who still has a job. Of course, the ophthalmologist looked into her eyes and told her she had twin pools of desire or conjunctivitis. The environment is moving, though. We can finally see the blue sky and wisps of clouds above it, which is normally in a gray haze. The haze that is just when the air is breathable and clear that people have to go around wearing masks. Anyway, you don't need to be an eye doctor to know how the profile of to notice how the profile of your client demographic is changing, literally. People have been told to stay at home so we can flatten the curve. But with nothing to do but make periodic trips to the refrigerator, I can tell you people aren't flattening the curve, they're flattening their curves. Now, one good thing about all these webinars is that we only need to dress the top half of our bodies, since that's all anybody sees. We discover which pajamas are for sleeping, which pajamas are for exercise, and which pajamas are best for webinar wear. So our wardrobe choices these days are confined to normal pajamas, exercise pajamas, formal pajamas. Anyway, I know my jokes are even more lame than my friend Dr. Sethi's. He asked me once, where do ophthalmologists listen to music? His answer, iTunes. That's the limit. I once asked Dr. Sethi, what's this floater doing in my eye? And he replied, the backstroke. But the truth is that Dr. Sethi would rather not be known as an ophthalmologist. He prefers to be considered a visionary. In his introduction, he spoke of sight, insight, and foresight. So let's discuss what might be a credible vision for the post-COVID world. A few minutes, and then I'll be happy to take any questions you may have. There are a number of trends that will affect all of us, some more in some countries than others, so I won't try and do a comprehensive thing. But if I had to pick half a dozen issues that will affect everybody everywhere, I think one concern that's clearly rising in India and in many other countries is the real risk of the rise of the surveillance state. That is, that all of us have been told at the very beginning of this crisis the lack of credible data in actually being able to trace people with the virus was a serious problem. So people started inventing apps to do that, to provide contact tracing. Governments leapt on. Today we have an app called the Arunodaya app, which has been made mandatory by the government. If you want to catch a plane, catch a train, be evacuated, go to work in the government, etc. And the problem with that is it uses the app itself, plus cell phone towers, plus mobile cell phone towers, Bluetooth and GPS to trace your every movement in order to beep if you come within 50 meters of anyone who's been diagnosed with COVID. The problem is, of course, it can also trace where you're going, who you're meeting, even after COVID is over. And this is something that remains a serious risk to people's privacy, and there are similar problems with many similar apps in other countries. There is a great risk, I think, if I were to take a second issue, of an increase in mental health problems in the world. We're seeing more and more reports, even in a country like where we don't have much of a tradition of going to psychiatrists. We go to more ophthalmologists than we go to shrinks. But certainly there's a rise now in mental health problems from people in domestic violence, all sorts of challenges, and this is something that I think we all need to watch out for. A third, perhaps a slightly more benign likely development, is changes in the way we live. One obvious change is the fact that we are doing so much online and virtually that we will presumably find ourselves in a situation where many companies will continue to resort to this kind of work pattern more and more, rather than obliging people to congest the roads and pour themselves trains and buses to get to offices. That kind of significant change will have other kind of knock-on effects. Of course, it will require countries to dramatically increase their broadband capacity. In India, we are, I think, 92nd in a list of 103 countries when it comes to broadband range, depth, and speed. So I think certainly we need to improve that dramatically if we want to get onto that particular bandwagon. I believe we should, at least for kind of white-collar work. It'll have ripple effects on things like urban planning, because if a lot of people don't need to live in congested city centers anymore, you might be able to actually allow people to work out of villages and rural areas as long as there's reliable 24/7 electricity and excellent last-mile connectivity of broadband, neither of which we've been able to take for granted so far. And you can start decongesting our over-congested cities in the process. So there's some interesting issues there that are going to arise for issues of urban planning, for transport infrastructure, as well as for the kinds of future for offices, office buildings. Will people need to be in large office buildings anymore? A lot of these things are much less clear. You all know Twitter has allowed everyone to work from home as much as they like indefinitely, well beyond COVID. That's one company, Silicon Valley company, so ahead of its time, but others may well be inspired by that example. Three more quick points on global trends. I think one thing is very clear: we're going to be seeing much more deglobalization. That is, that there's an increase in nationalism, which was already apparent before the coronavirus. Many countries, Mr. Trump with his Make America Great Again and America First and similar slogans, but also Britain with its Brexit from Europe, some European countries with their own versions of very strong hyper-nationalism and populism. All of that was on the rise already, and we are no stranger to that in India under the Narendra Modi BJP government. But with COVID has come an increasing desire for protectionism. In India, the Prime Minister has made two speeches in which he's hammered away at self-reliance, 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 in his phrase. And the result of this is going to be, I mean, the reason for this is partially because of the difficult lessons that people learned from their dependence on global supply chains. So when China initially shut down, a lot of factories around the world were disrupted because crucial parts for vital products they assembled for export were no longer coming from China. The same applied to other countries as other countries shut down. And now more and more countries are saying we need to bring manufacturing back to our own countries, even if it means paying a little more. Well, that will then also create an end to the cheap consumer culture in the world. Because if indeed you're not getting the bulk of your goods cheaply manufactured in China and assembled in Malaysia and exported from Vietnam, then you're going to be paying more for it if you're going to be paying American workers or German workers to do what East Asian workers were doing till now. So all this is going to change our consumption patterns as well as our financial outgoings. And the world is flat that Thomas Friedman wrote about 20 years ago is suddenly going to look a lot less flat in the years ahead. So deglobalization, more nationalism, more protectionism seems to be the order of the day. A corollary of this is I think we're going to see threats to multilateralism. Already seen a rise in xenophobia in many societies. People of Chinese have been discriminated against in many places. That's unfortunate, but it's at the same time something there's been a lot of evidence for. Even in India, you're seeing people from the Northeast suffering examples of racism, though in India, the attacks have been much more on the Muslim community. If you look at parts of the Western world, there have been well-publicized incidents in which Chinese-looking people have been thrown out of public spaces, supermarkets, and so on. So xenophobia is rising. Every plague, every pandemic has had people wanting to point their fingers at an outgroup that they hold responsible for this foreign invasion of their lives in the shape of a virus. And I would say that what you might see is much more of that, linked with a backing away from the international cooperation that was a characteristic of multilateral approaches in the past. We're already seeing a dramatic attack by the US administration of Donald Trump against the World Health Organization, the organization that people expected would have kept us safe, and perhaps arguably has not done enough at the beginning of the crisis to identify it and perhaps was, as the Americans allege, too protective of the Chinese version. But the truth is that the Americans suspension funding to WHO and a thinly veiled threat to withdraw within 30 days unless it commits to unspecified reforms is a major blow at multilateralism. The US has already withdrawn from UNESCO. If it withdraws from WHO, the question comes up as will it withdraw from the UN next? And you've got some real worries about whether the careful global multilateral edifice built up in 1945 by far greater statesmen than those are ruling us now, whether that edifice might crumble in the wake of the COVID disaster. And the final thing we'll all have to see is what happens to China. On this, I don't have a prediction because it can go one of two ways. Either the Chinese could end up being far more assertive, far more confident, far more willing to deploy their checkbooks, their resources. You saw them sending doctors and nurses and medicines and masks. Italy to Serbia, winning the approbation of these Western countries that way. But there's the other possibility is instead of more assertive and more dominant China, would be a tendency to decouple from China. Already countries like the US and Australia have begun a process of decoupling from China. Japan has given a $2 billion set of incentives for Japanese companies to leave China, and even $250 million of incentives to Japanese companies who will leave China and go to third countries if they can't come back to Japan. So all of these could suggest a trend that will see the abandonment of China. I think there's enough evidence of both. A more assertive China we're already seeing, as I mentioned, yesterday's news is that Hong Kong is going to be cracked down upon by the Chinese with a new national security law and other tough procedures. So we're looking at a situation in which the people of China in many ways are poised to have a very decisive impact on the shape of global geopolitics of the post-COVID world, whether as a more assertive, more belligerent superpower, embarking perhaps on a course that will bring it into conflict with other countries, or a China that retreats behind the Great Wall, including walls thrown up by other countries who want to end and limit their dependence on China. I think whatever happens, and these are just 6 trends, I could give you an hour-long speech and identify many more details. These are 6 big ones I think will affect everyone. But I would say that whatever happens, I think it's highly unlikely that it will be business as usual. It already isn't in the world, and it's unlikely to be business as usual in the post-COVID scenario, whenever that may be. And it doesn't look like it's going to be tomorrow or the day after, but whenever we actually have finally got on top of this virus, or the virus itself has abandoned the world, as SARS did and MERS did and some of the other earlier coronaviruses, then I think we will have to take stock of a changed world. And in the churning we're seeing now, there are going to be a lot of new developments that we can look forward to, in some cases with anticipation, in many other cases with dread. So I'm sorry to have started off with bad jokes and ended up with bad news. But I'll pause here, and if anybody has questions or comments, I'm happy to respond until you want to move on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor, for your lovely speech. And I have one question for you which our viewers would like to know. India is a developing country. What opportunities do you see post-COVID for the medical profession, especially for the ophthalmologists, how we could serve the nation and the humanity at large?
Well, certainly I think the medical profession is going to matter very much more already, because it's shameful that the government of India only spends 1.28% of GDP on public health, and we're clearly going to need to spend very much. There are going to be a lot more resources coming into medicine. My appeal to the profession is to do a lot more innovative work, and to do it in ways that will be responsive to the real needs of the Indian people, and particularly the poorer segments of our society. Poor Indians are very often the ones who are frankly being left behind in many of the efforts that we see, and their omission from priorities of the rich mean that very often their illnesses are left untreated or inadequately treated. Now, a pandemic is a stark reminder that if you don't take care of the weak, the vulnerable, and the ill, they'll infect the ones who think they're rich and secure and above it all. And we're all in this together. Viruses are no respecters of bank accounts. So I hope that we will see a much more active and busy medical profession with a lot more resources, a lot more priority, but also a need to innovate and to bring their services to a larger population. If you look at the state that everyone hails as a model of success, it's mine, Kerala. In Kerala, we have a very robust public health infrastructure that extends all the way to the rural areas. Every village has a functioning community health center or primary health center with nurses and doctors and medicines. And if we can move in that direction for the whole of India, it would be a great try. Ophthalmologists, in many ways, have not been specifically challenged by COVID, because while COVID seems to affect every internal organ, there's no specific example of eye damage coming out of it. But in the general re-emphasis on public health, eye health is also something that we can focus on in the time ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. We would like you to stay on with us, and we'd like the next speaker to show us his job so that we can then take it up from there, and we require your comments on the hobby they're going to show. So you'll be with us for another 15 minutes. In the meantime, the audience can send in their questions. And we're very, very grateful.
I have another 5:30 commitments I will have to abandon you. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, sir. Thank you. So after that very enlightening talk, we're going to have the presentation by Dr. Irene Golani, who's the director of Golani Vision Eye Institute from Jacksonville, USA. Dr. Golani will be trying to...
Okay. So then I'll play the piano.
Yeah.
I thought I should learn to play music because many in my family play music. So here we go.
I can hear you.
Does it work?
Yes, it works.
It does.
Okay.
Superb.
So you can all see that with my family, who all play music, I have about 9,990 hours more to practice out of the required 10,000 hours. So I'm trying, but they're all better than I am by a long shot. So let me move on to my lecture. Hopefully you can see the screen.
We do see your screen.
You can see, okay. So I was asked to speak about something in 2 minutes, which is a bit difficult. So one of the problems we see in cataract surgery is extension of capsulotomy and getting tear-outs, like Argentinian flag sign. So I want to show you that it's a problem with femtos as well. And first thing I want to do is give credit to the recent video at the ASRS virtual meeting by Dr. Vina Sethi and her co-workers. And one of the points I noticed in her video is her frequent refilling with HPMC. And I think that is an issue because India uses both the HPMC. So let me take that back and extend a bit. And Argentinian flag sign really is not a complex problem. It's a problem because when you allow the pressure in front of the anterior capsule to be less than the pressure behind it, the capsule will naturally, by basic physics, tend to tear outwards. And I've talked in my courses and written papers about doing what I call pressure equalized cataract surgery, where you increase the pressure in front of the lens to exceed that behind it, and the capsule will tear in and not out. So here's a video of a patient with a hypermature cataract where I inject Helon 5 and then gently paint trypan blue under it without filling the chamber and decreasing the pressure. And you can see that you can then easily, with a needle, not a process, because you don't disturb the anterior chamber, go around and open the capsule and nothing moves. So the same principle. So the principle is pressure, as we learned from a movie last year. And you see here's a picture of the flag sign and one below it of the patient who just had flax. And the same thing has happened in both cases. In the hypermature cataract, you see necrosis of a particular content, and imbibing of water makes the pressure inside the capsule greater than outside of it. And that can be counterbalanced by using a very highly viscous cohesive OVD in front of the capsule. And the same thing occurs in flax. When you get gas inside the capsular bag, the lens can move forward and block the capsular exits and allow the pressure to build up. That can cause these capsules to extend. So I'll show two cases here. And here's a fairly simple one, where you can see over here that the capsule has not separated from the peripheral capsule. As I inject Helon 5 until I see a depression in the center, I know that the capsule will only put in and not out. And I use these very tiny Haldor-Purkinje mascular forceps, go in and do what Jim Gills always did, push posterior for the rexus and not anteriorly. And as you push it in and towards the center, it will all tear inwards. So I'll show you a more complicated one on the right side. And here you see that most of the capsule here is not free. You get the arc where it's free, but you don't see it free here at all. You go back with the same forceps and you push in and pull centrally with a slight rotation movement, and you will cause the capsule to tear in the method that Jim Gills always did his capsulotomies, by pushing posteriorly and centrally. And if you do that, the capsule cannot tear out, because when you increase the pressure in front of the capsule to exceed that behind it, it can only tear in. So that prevents you from ever getting errant capsulotomies. So in summary, pressure equalized cataract surgery allows you to avoid not just Argentinian flag sign, but also an incomplete femto capsulotomy. So that's my 2-minute talk. And then I'll stop sharing the screen. My only comment would be I've been using the time of the pandemic to try to learn piano, which my family all play, and they play instruments, and I don't. So I thought I'd spend some time to learn. I'm sorry that I was so bad, so I inserted my children and grandchildren to show you that some of them actually do play quite well. But I do have a few points to mention to you about using OVDs better. And I know that in India they don't like to use Helon, or they use HPMC. But for some cases, if you use a more highly viscous cohesive OVD, it does make things easier. So thank you very much. Comments and questions are welcome.
Thank you, sir. I beg to differ that you don't play well. I think you played really well. I think we'll move on to our next speaker because we're running a little short of time. Questions will be followed after. We're going to have Dr. Weber now introduce Dr. Ehud Dasya. Dr. Weber, please take over.
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ehud Dasya, Medical Director at Untitled Eye Center, Tel Aviv, Israel. And he'll be telling us about his passion and how that has helped him in growing ophthalmology. Dr. Dasya.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay, so.
Dr. Dasya, can you see the slide?
I can see the slide.
Yeah.
I cannot control it.
I'll do that for you. Just say next.
Okay, it will take forever. Anyway, okay, let me just start and tell you a little bit our life in within ophthalmology now with the COVID. Next. Okay, and now that because of the COVID, we have plenty of time. We have much less patient visits, much less operations, no elective surgery, no travels, no meetings, no family visits, and no babysitting. Next, please. And this is pretty sad because, this is, for example, our family gathering. This is an example for the Passover celebration. Next, please. We used to be like 20 to 30 people. Now we are only the two of us, me and my wife, and a computer, in which we need to share the family with the Zoom. Next. And now I've been asked to talk about the hobby. Now, being a chairman of an eye department for 25 years and a CMO and a owner of a private eye institute, which is 3 times bigger, director of a research center, professor of the university, startup companies, consultant, reviewer, local and international meetings as a participant and meeting organizer. Next. And you are asking about hobbies. Who has time for hobbies? Next. So I think the closest thing to what we may call a passion is my passion for traveling, and I love to travel all over the world. And this is really my biggest passion, especially for all these exotic places. It's the biggest fun to do it when you do it next with the family. And I used to take my family, my wife, 3 kids, spouses, and now 5 grandchildren all over the world, and this is really the greatest fun one can have next year. Now, can we share this concept with our profession? Absolutely yes. We can do it by doing some eye camps and humanitarian missions, and we do it really all over the world, especially in Asia and Africa. We can see in the lower 2 left, our mission in the power of a patient, and my wife is a pediatrician. She treats kids of all ages. And the upper, just above it, in Ethiopia, we organized an operating room. And then on the right, this was in Kenya, that we set up an operating theater with 2 surgeons sitting back to back. And this is where we organized. So you can really combine traveling and doing some good missions and goodwill all over the world. Next. So now we have the COVID. Now we cannot travel. We cannot move anywhere. What we do have now is time, lots of time. And this is a good time to do some cleaning. The first thing to clean was to clean my table. And I submitted within 2 months just 7 papers. 3 of them have been already accepted. And the next thing was to clean the house next week. But it was a good opportunity to take everything that's in the garage and in the drawers next to and making a place that you can live in. Next. And it was a good opportunity also to take care of the garden. Now we have the time to do that. Next, please. And also the time to clean everything from the basement, throw it away. Next. And set place for the grandchildren for the playground. Next. And since we cannot go to the gym these days because we get chance to do a gym of my own at home. Next. And I think that I've never been so active physically with doing sport as I was in the last couple of months. I did not do that for the last 20 years that much. Next. Tonight was a good time also to do some jogging for 10 kilometers and do bicycling. So it is some advantages, not all disadvantages. Next. What
the access, I don't know.
As the poem, Roman poem, Gurugram, from almost 2,000 years ago said, mens sana in corpore sano, in Latin, that means healthy mind and healthy body. And I think probably it was right. It just took me 20 years to realize. Next. What I would like to share with you now is two papers. Actually, this is one subject and two papers which were both accepted for publication in the Journal of Cataract Refractive Surgery. And this is a modification of a technique which is an adjustable technique, a technique to scar fixation of either as primary fixation of lenses, fixation of capsule stabilizing devices, analytic lenses. This is one paper. And the second one was using the similar technique for repositioning subluxated intraocular lenses. Next. And basically, we all need to give credit to the pioneers. We all know Germania's technique was the first one to use the French technique. He used it for the previous lens. Now followed by Selective from Brazil, who suggests use lens and use it to make a small hole in the IOL and put it in. Next. Now we further modified this technique and we use petroleum, which we feel much more confident with, and it also has a good needle. So now with this technique, and this is what I'm going to tell you, we can use it for primary implantation, secondary implantation, one piece, three piece, hydrophobic lenses, dislocated whether crystalline or intraocular lenses, capsule stabilizing devices. Actually, any kind of scar fixation can probably be done with this technique. Next. Now, this is a technique how we can use it with hydrophobic and hydrophilic lens. On the left, you see that we actually thread with the needle. We go through the optic-optic junction, and we create kind of a pseudo optic with this rolling suture. On the right, this is an hydrophilic lens, and we can pass this needle and create a flange anywhere along the optic, at the optic junction, and at the optic. Actually, anywhere, all around the IOL, we can puncture the lens and create this pseudo optic. So we can use both hydrophilic and hydrophobic materials. Next. This is what it looks in the eye after implantation. On the right, we can see how the eye looks like. We don't see the flanges if it is vertical. Only when we pull down the eyelid, we can see the tissue is well covered. Next. And then we can see when it is done horizontally, we can see the small flanges after 1 week, well covered, and there is no irritation. I like to do it in radially, so it would not create any kind of a tilt of the optic. Next. And now we like to share with you this called video. Please activate the video. And this is the case of subluxated intraocular lens. Can we run the video, please?
Hi.
Can we run the video?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so now we see a subluxated lens, and we are going to use two techniques. First, we separate it between the capsule and the optic, and now we thread it through the anchor, which is my preferred technique. This is a device that we introduced several years ago. And now we thread the needle through the sclera and put in the anchor so that the two prongs are located behind the capsule. The central rod is in front, push it down. And now we create with a diatomy a temporary flange. We insert the 27 gauge needle behind the optic and then in front of the optic and make these two flanges, close it on one side. And this is the beauty. We can adjust it until we make sure that we are absolutely perfectly centered as it is now. And this is at the end of the surgery. The IOL is well centered. Next. No, next. And this is what the eye looks like at the end of surgery. Next, we can see the anchor on top with one flange next, and then we see the two flanges of the lower optic, well centered and very stable. So it does work also for this capsule stabilizing device. And this is an aniridic IOL, and you can see the color is brown. This is the color of actually the lens as it was when you manufacture. It was total aniridia. Next. And you see not only it's stable and effective, it's also cosmetically very well appealing. Next. So we are now at the time of COVID-19. It is a terrifying pandemic. It's not over yet. We need to remember it. We may still see a second wave, but the lockdown has its advantages. Mainly, we have time to do things. We have time to clean, and we can turn this lemon into lemonade next. And it's time to clean. It's time to clean the table. It's time to clean the house, and it's time to clean the mind. So it's not all bad, but hopefully it will be over soon. And I thank you very much. Next.
Thank you so much, sir. Do you have any questions, sir? I think Dr. Arun asked a question.
Arun, we cannot hear you. Arun, I see that you're speaking, but your mic is off. You're muted.
Did you unmute? Okay, I think we're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is none other than Dr. Steve Charles, who's going to be introduced by Dr. Gerald Schultz. Dr. Gerald Schultz, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Well, thank you for giving me the honor of introducing Steve Charles. I first heard Steve lecture in 1980 in London, where he was the keynote speaker at the 100th anniversary of the Ophthalmological Society of the United Kingdom, just a few short years after completing his residency at the Bascom Palmer Eye Institute and his tenure at the National Institutes of Health. His delivery was fast-paced as he described his novel approaches for retina vitreous surgery. The British ophthalmologists were so impressed, they told him they wanted to send their retina patients to him. He said that he practices in Tennessee. They said, no problem, we'll send them to you anyway. Now, Steve is really a hybrid. He studied mechanical and electrical engineering in college, which he used to design surgical instruments and procedures, not only for ophthalmology, but robots for minimally invasive orthopedic and neurosurgery. Steve loves flying. Currently, he owns and flies a Sabre 65 jet. He has lectured in 51 countries and has done surgery in 25. If I recited all the honors he received and papers and book chapters he wrote, it would take up the whole allotted time for this webinar. So instead, I will give you Steve Charles himself.
Dr. Steve Charles. So we can't see you. There's a dongle in front of the camera.
Now we need Steve Charles. Yeah. Did the introduction go fine? Did you hear it?
Yeah, we heard it perfectly.
Thank you.
Dr. Steve Charles, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Dr. Charles?
Yes?
Yeah, it's...
Dr. Charles, have you disabled the video? There's something which is blocking your camera.
There's a physical thing as well. Yeah. We can see the right side of your headset.
How about that?
No, there's something in front of the camera. Right there.
I think that there are two cameras on your PC. Yeah, now we are able to see you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so I elected not to put together a formal video presentation or PowerPoint because of some of the problems with the other ones. But I want to thank first Dr. Schultz for that really nice introduction. The first speeches, the two speeches we had by the non-ophthalmologists, particularly the second one, hit on a lot of things that concern me about the world that we live in. I have three daughters, two of whom are physicians. The third one works with children, and I was going to talk, frankly, in the introduction about why I don't have any hobbies and I don't want to have a hobby because I feel a moral responsibility to work. I'm 77 years old. I work 70, 80 hours a week. I haven't had a vacation in 24 years. I haven't seen a movie in 30. I don't drink. My only outlet, I guess, other than work is to work out, and the only change there is I used to go to a gym and work out for an hour 4 times a week, and I had equipment in storage and I put it in my little apartment, so I work out at home. I used to go to nice restaurants for dinner by myself every night. I live alone for many years, and now I cook my crummy cooking at the house. So the only difference is no more restaurants, no more gyms, probably for the rest of my life. And I have no plans to retire. I have zero interest in a vacation, and as I said, I work long hours. I was going to address, I want to briefly state that we have horrendous leadership in the United States in the form of Donald Trump in the White House. It's absolutely tragic what he's done with World Health and a variety of other things. These were addressed by our prior speakers, but I share those concerns about our relationship with nations around the world and our position of doing the right thing. It's absolutely tragic. I want to hit on one specific thing that I decided to talk about as I listened to the other speakers. My dad was a college professor. He was professor and chair throughout his life, a variety of departments. He was a famous art historian and sculptor, very humble guy, never wore a coat and tie, worked 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. We never had vacations or anything, and didn't make any money to speak of. But at our dinner table would be, and I'm very serious, a rabbi, a Catholic priest, an atheist physicist, a gay male banker and his partner, college students, grad students, with my mom's casserole home cooking. And that admixture of people was what I was brought up with, and I could not have been more fortunate to have that sort of upbringing. And that was the way I'd like to things go. But it got me to thinking about the role of education and how there's so many pieces of collateral damage that this virus, COVID, has done. It's clear that it's killed, 300,000+ people worldwide, and will kill more as we go forward. And that's the most tragic piece of it. And that we've lost some of our elders around the world, many of them because people didn't properly look after them. Tragic. But there are other things that are going on. I support for domestic violence victims. I'm on the local council for that, and I literally, physically, financially support victims that I've met and help them. And so domestic violence is on the rise. Alcoholism is on the rise. Drug abuse in my county here in Memphis, Tennessee is on the rise. 300 overdoses, 15% were fatal in the last month. That's a huge increase. So many pieces. But now let's come back to my thought about my dad and my thought about education. I'm absolutely concerned about the impact of COVID on our great universities, not just in this country, but around the world.
Can you go sit in a classroom next to somebody? When will you not be infected? Since asymptomatic transmission occurs in up to 35% of people, how can you test? Can you check their temperature, ask them, are you coughing or sneezing? It's not sufficient. So the classroom experience becomes this virtual education, which lacks a personal touch and engagement and an immersion, an emotional connection, body language, and a variety of other things. It's, I think, just different to stare at a screen as much as we're trying to do it right now versus being in a classroom with other students. Then the social aspect of college, which I didn't participate in. I wasn't in a fraternity and didn't go to parties, but I did go to sporting events. Now that's gone. How do you put kids in a dormitory in a COVID-19 world or the next virus? Very, very concerning. And then if you look at the financial future of these major universities as well as smaller ones all over the world, if they don't have students' tuition, if they're being charged, say, 1/10 as much for online education, and the endowments are all dedicated to a chair for this, a chair for that, or buildings, because rich people like to see their names on buildings for some reason, I've never understood, then where do we go with this? How do we keep the MITs and the Stanfords? The state and local governments are absolutely out of money in this country, and the federal government prints money, but it's going to run out if it prints money forever. So how can we keep the public universities going, let alone the private? So I'm extremely concerned about the future of education. And then if you dial it back from the college level, university level, where my father worked, and you look at little kids, the socialization, the exercise, even physical education, the laboratory experience, touching things, building things, painting, assembling things, taking things apart. You can't do that on your computer, and I'm very concerned about about those formative years, the first 6, 7, 8 years of your life when you're building your brain. So no hobbies except, I guess my hobby is worrying about all the things that I just addressed. To talk a little bit about where we're going medically, there's some really, really exciting news. And as I said, I chose not to do a presentation on it in a formal sense, but I'm involved with the project at the NIH, where I worked for 2 years, and as a volunteer, I work there now, headed by a gentleman that was originally from India, who's a PhD named Kapil Bharti, and he is absolutely brilliant. There's 50 scientists on the team. We collaborated with the team that rolled out of the university, spun out of the University of Wisconsin, and a rather large company there that has the Fujifilm bulb. What are they doing? They make absolutely perfect human RPE and human rods and cones. Perfect. They are, so these are all induced pluripotential stem cell derived. They're all tissue typed. GCP, GLP, and GMP is in place. So what does that mean? That means that it's scalable. It's unlike university experiences where at USC and UCLA and Oxford, we did 5 of these and 8 of those. It's not scalable. You can't. It's a so what. It's look what we did. It's interesting science, but it's not. You can't commercialize it. So we can today make, and we will be starting very shortly. We've done well over 400 pigs at NIH, and we'll be starting on humans with replacing the RPE under the macula in geographic atrophy with a biodegradable scaffold with these RPE cells. They make VEGF on the back, which is required to keep the chorocapillaries alive. They make RPE-derived ghost factor in the front, which is required to make photoreceptors alive. And the FDA has approved us to do, I'll be doing the surgery, up to 12 eyes in these geographic atrophy patients. You cannot inject stem cells in the eye. You cannot inject retinal progenitor cells in the eye or under the retina. If you do, you simply make a teratoma of PVR or a scar tissue. I think that embryonic stem cells are dead on arrival. I think it's an absolutely ridiculous approach to try to immune suppress people. Who's going to pay for banking embryonic stem cells? So I think that's a mistake. And I think that retinal chips are an exercise in futility. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent on retinal chips. ophthalmologists, and I think it's a miserable failure. Both the major European project and the major U.S. project is more or less abandoned. So in short, it's about emulating nature, recapitulating embryologic development, and then that means induced pluripotential stem cells. Where do they come from? Skin fibroblasts are not as good as circulating CD34 positive cells. Those can be transformed in a two-stage conversion to neural crest cells and then to what we call authentic RPE cells. The cells require some 25 tests to make certain that there's no oncogenes. For example, USC literally implanted in patients from a stem cell line that was quote unquote an approved line that had an oncogene. That's absolutely unacceptable to do that. And so in short, I'm extremely excited about the future. Now, there's one niche thing I want to mention. Tamer Mahmood, when he was at Duke, he's now in Detroit, invented the full thickness macular patch graft in much of a serendipitous mode. It is a brilliant thing. I'm part of the consortium. We've done, as a group, over 100 cases. I've done over 50. My addition to it was to change to medium-term PFO, so you oxygenate this graft from the front. Why am I talking about fixing macular holes now in this context? Because these macular patch grafts hook up to the retina. They absolutely demonstrate adaptive synaptogenesis. They microperimetry shows fixation right in the middle of the graft. I've taken people with Count's fingers vision in a 3,000 micron macular hole, and they're 20/40. They're reading small print. Not all of them. We have about a 90% success rate of graft viability. And so what does that tell us? It tells us there's way more capability of retinal modeling, of incorporation of implanted photoreceptors, implanted on a biodegradable scaffold on top of RPE. Because of transsynaptic degeneration, you've got to transplant RPE and photoreceptors, probably not bipolars, but we demonstrated connectivity to inner retina. And we were concerned because of the work of Robert Mark that connectivity wouldn't happen. So amidst all the pessimism, which is highly appropriate about the impact of COVID-19 on humankind, on so many institutions, on our youth, on our elderly, on our elders, in spite of all that negative, which is very factual, there's some optimism in curing certain forms of blindness that were heretofore untreatable, and I'm excited and very fortunate to be involved in that process. Thank you for letting me participate.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Hudson wants to ask you a question. So we will bring him along.
Can you hear me, Dr. Picard?
Yes, sir.
It's an honor to speak to you. You know, you are my hero in the retinal field.
Thank you.
And
you like my hair?
Yeah, I see. I love your hair. Would you believe creating a scaffold into a large macular hole with an internal limiting membrane would work? Also, what about the RPE? Would work better? And as you mentioned, giving a bath of anti-angiogenics really would work, giving a bath of anti-angiogenics inside the hole for creating this scaffold?
Specifically regarding challenging macular holes, those larger than, say, 700 microns, those that have failed primary surgery, in primary macular hole surgery that Neil Kelly developed, it's edge-to-edge closure. So the whole notion of something in there, a scaffold, fibrin, autologous platelet concentrate, factor 13, whatever, was inappropriate. We thought we had to fill the gap. That's not what we need. In primary macular hole surgery, it's edge-to-edge closure, like closing a clean incision, like a cataract incision. In the holes that are larger, where it won't close in spite of release of retinal elasticity by peeling the ILM, we need neurologic tissue in there. I'm not a fan of an amniotic membrane, which is extremely expensive, and you're hoping the cells will grow. Why not implant posterior retina like we're doing, and we already have a 90% success rate and remarkable visual outcomes. So instead of trying to think of something else, what we've got now. Now, once we have the ability to make photoreceptors on a biodegradable scaffold and implant that is derived from CD34 positive circulating cells. That's a very expensive process, but once we have that for other conditions, say chronic retinal detachment or retinitis pigmentosa or hereditary macular dystrophy, then sure, we could use it for macular holes as well. But for the time being, I'm not a fan of ILM flaps because that's a cellular material. I want to put retina there. The difference, Tamara Mahmood did it with silicone oil, which doesn't oxygenate the graft. So I came up with this idea of PFO, which does oxygenate. It was developed for liquid ventilation in the medical world as well as for a blood substitute. So it carries more oxygen carrying capacity than hemoglobin, whereas silicone oil has a very low oxygen extraction ratio. So that was one piece. But the other thing I did was to say, why are we using peripheral retina thinking Mueller cells are retinal progenitor cells? That's only true in fish, teleos, not above that level. I said, let's use posterior retinal. Let's use something that has at least some cone content and some of the Americans and bipolars and horizontals that are connectivity with those cones. And it was just a hope that that adaptive synaptogenesis would occur, but in fact it does. The depressing first papers of Robert Mark from Utah said that when rods and cones die, that not only do inner retina die, but a glial seal form between inner and outer retina. So you read that, you say this is hopeless. But if you read carefully the papers, it said that rod and cone, but particularly rod, axons actually extend through inner retina and synapse on axons. What gets me, and so I was thinking maybe that's why this works, but it's more complicated than that, and it's better than that. It's really remodeling. Why do I say that? 2030, 2040 doesn't happen with rods. These patients have color perception. They have microperimetry. And get this, a handful of my patients, I think 5, foveated. So you put flat tissue in there that then a fovea developed. It's absolutely amazing, the remodeling power. And so I'm very hopeful about that.
Yeah, the best thing would be to rearrange these photoreceptors in the right position, because as you said, they come up together with the ganglion cells, and
you can open the presentation, ma'am.
Okay, there's the presentation. All right, so I'm going to start the slideshow so you can see and hear me, because I can't see myself. Correct?
Shape, normal fovea.
Yes, you cannot, but we are able to see you and your presentation together.
Okay, because I can't see myself. My passion is my family, and hopefully you're seeing on one side my parents, and on the other Amir, my husband's parents.
Thank you so much,
one of the biggest influences in my young life was my mother, Dr. Troy's brothers, who started the field of psychology and used it so well I didn't know she was using it on me. When we were just married, this was our first apartment,
and it
was a wonderful time in our lives, and now we're almost half a century together. I was very fortunate to have both a career and children, as did my grandmother and my mother. My grandmother was a lawyer with my grandfather, and we have 4 beautiful children. I managed to be pregnant at the end of medical school, and then at the end of residency, and then was able to take off 3 months during each child. They're now grown and wonderful, healthy people, though I felt I always had a ball in the air that I was juggling and hoping to catch. Our son has given us 3 beautiful grandchildren who we really adore. I have other desires. I love to travel, especially to India. Cooking is a joy. I love to teach, and nature is so beautiful. How, but why not? She, give it to me. Open the gates. You are welcome. Flow past the pills, past the pain. Reduce cruel casted confines in an evolving instant some relief. Give me ancient, give it all to me. FDA, learn Chinese. Why deny any rescue road or flowing river? I will see you again. From 2.9 people in a couple, that was the last day before I had my first child, to 12 people in our family. We're grateful, and it brings us joy. Well, friendship and science do mix, and I thank the Safeys for broadening our ability to care for people, to teach, and to have the joy of sharing all that I learned. And I want to show you a particular case of a nonverbal 65-year-old. You can see they're very dense black cataracts. They actually do come this way in Iowa, where I practiced for 35 years, though I'm an adjunct professor now at University of Utah and no longer do patient care. I described this procedure that I called circumferential disassembly, I believe in 2004 in Osher's Video Journal. And the goal is, once you get the nucleus moving, to use burst with longitudinal phaco and a blunt second instrument like this, I just can't think of the name this instant, which I'll tell you in a moment, and to debulk it from the inside out. This way we can keep a nice arsenic soft shell under the cornea, and everything happens at the iris plane or below. We're only using ultrasound to gain purchase on the nucleus, and this is why I've left the sound on for the second eye there. You'll see that this is a bilateral sequential brunescent phaco, which I learned the skills to do, including intracameral moxifloxacin from Steve Arshnoff. But this is my own technique. And you see there's still an endonucleus, and you're looking for that plane. And this allows us to leave the nucleofied epinucleus in place to keep the capsule expanded and keep it from that floppy capsule from coming up to the phaco tip, and keep weak zonules well expanded and not stretched, and keep everything well away from the endothelium by debulking it. It is a bit of a labor of love. As you can see, this is certainly a sped up video so that it would fit in for the sake of time, and I'm using this second-hand instrument to break the leathery interdigitated central fibers. I'm just starting to see red reflex now. Trypan is helpful at the beginning for the capsulorhexis, which should always be made in a size that can allow you to optic capture, if necessary, as your backdoor safety net. And as we begin to get to this all of the nuclear material out, pretty soon we'll lower the aspiration and flow so that we don't attract the posterior capsule, and always keep the second-hand instrument in place when we apply our phaco time. Now I'm ahead on the second eye, which wasn't quite as bad as the first. And if we want this general anesthesia to be one anesthesia for this patient, and you'll see, I noticed there's a fiber, I'm going to go for it right away, a few chips. Always pursue it when you can and you see it. In addition, and they always look like they have no cortex, but they often do have cortex peripherally, and we want to make sure that we get that nice and clean. Now what we need to do is make a posterior capsulorhexis, and so I'm using a 30-gauge bevel-up needle to open the posterior capsule, and then I'll use OVD, cohesive OVD, to separate Berger space and make sure that that potential space becomes real and protect the anterior hyaloid membrane so that we don't puncture it and have vitreous presentation. And you can see I'm ahead doing that in the second eye down below. But in the first eye, we'll go ahead and we can even go through the main incision, though you can use a microforcep through a paracentesis. But when you have good control with your OVD, as I do here, there's no posterior pressure whatsoever. And there's a little fibrotic plaque on this first eye, which we'll get around. I'm hearing an echo, but that's life. And I can even enlarge it so that I can use my anterior rhexis as a kind of a cookie cutter so that I'll be able to implant a lens and then optic capture into Berger's space. This absolutely assures, according to Tassignon and Menapace and Burkhard Dick, all of whom have done this procedure and taught me, particularly my mentor for this was Rupert Menapace in Vienna. And it's 100% that there will be no clouding of the visual axis. So we push, usually for normal anterior rhexis, we just push on the two poles 90 degrees away. Here we have to walk it around just a little bit. And what you'll see here is that we have nice clear visual axis from day one. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to hear any questions. I want to say that I think Steve Charles is both rational and amazing in what he has presented to us, and that was truly a joy. Let's see if I can get back to seeing myself and you. Stop sharing, perhaps?
Stop sharing. Yeah.
I did stop sharing, but I still don't see you. Maybe I can find you. Here we go. Okay, very good. So hopefully that was brief and within time limits and clear. And I can't say I have no hobbies. I have many hobbies. I can't say I work all the time. I enjoy not working as much as I enjoy working. And it's been a privilege to do what sounds like a pittance in India, which is maybe 30,000 cataract surgeries, and be the one in the middle of Iowa to be able to be an early adopter. And that has been one of the great joys of my life. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We love hearing you, and that was indeed a pleasure. Next, we have Dr. Barbara Parolini, who's speaking to us from her center. She's the head of Vitreoretina unit in Brescia in Italy. Can we have Dr. Barbara next?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
I'm happy to be able to share my life with you. I'm with patients, I'm working, but I was able to find to share some time with you. Okay, so can I share my screen?
Perfect.
You can see it?
We can see.
All right, good. So, life and ophthalmology, and this is what my husband said, that I dedicate 3/4 of my time to my job and 20% to family, 5% to hobby. I thought it was more to my family, but this is how my dear son looked at me. And when I'm at work, I love staying in the OR. I could live in the operating room with just doing surgery. And that work is also mostly education and trying to learn more and more what to tell to my patient and how to share what I know with my colleagues. And now with the new ways also in webinar, but in any way I can. So I would like to say that the core of my work is spending time not just with my patient, but for education as well. Imaging. I think imaging is my second love, and it's strongly interconnected. So I study these images, I love to learn from them, trying to learn more. This is the core of my professional career, myopic fraction maculopathy. This table is what I'm about to publish to the European Journal. It's a new classification of myopic fraction maculopathy. And the table offers insight on the evolution of the disease, the prognosis of the disease, and guidelines for treatment. So my dream is to think that this table can be in any office of my colleagues around the world to be able to share with them what I have learned on the pathology and try to be useful for the community of my colleagues. My other main topic is has been the transplant of choroid and more recently the transplant of retina as well. As Dr. Charles was saying, I think that the transplant of tissue has many limitations, but it has been a pioneer work that allowed to understand many information on the ability of the retina to answer to different stimulation, to answer to the choroidal transplant, to answer to the retina transplant. So besides the results, it's been very important to study the ability of transplant because of what we have learned from it. And you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. As you can see from
I'm
this
sorry to
image,
interrupt you. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Dr. Lisa, can you please mute your microphone? Thank you so much.
It won't mute.
You can refresh the browser then.
Refresh the browser.
Yeah, over to you, Dr. Barbara.
okay, I will go on.
Yeah, please go.
Okay, so I was saying that even the transplant of tissue, we think it's not offering so many results. You can see from the pictures like this that we could even save the vision of many patients, even with this very debatable type of surgery. You see on the top a 62 years old lady with a CNV that has been treated many times. And on the bottom, you see the same patient after choroidal transplant, 7 years after choroidal transplant. She can still read and enjoys the 0.6 vision. So I think it has been very, very important to really try to understand what the transplant can offer to us. This was just a short video to show you, but I think you know how the transplant is performed. It's a very delicate and complicated surgery. I've been doing this for 15 years already, and I have collected my experience in publications with very long-term results. So my hobbies, I dedicate a very short time to my hobbies, and they are strongly interconnected somehow with what I do. Besides diet, that to me is growing life, because growing plant is growing life. My main hobby is photography. So as it is photography and imaging in ophthalmology, it is also in life. These are pictures that I have taken myself. I think the love for photography is the love of looking to the details, looking at what is around me. It's a gesture of love, trying to freeze every glimpse, every memory that basically I see through my eyes and through the eyes of others, to be able to keep my life with me forever. And so my family, as Lisa was saying, is my main interest. I have the fortune of having a wonderful husband and two daughters, 15 and 20 years of age. So I try to combine ophthalmology and life, traveling for meetings, that's what I used to do, with the family taking pictures. I think we will be able to start again in the future. I was able to show the world to my girls when I was invited to meetings, so they got to know cultures, education from other people in the world, from animals going from the southest point, either in America and in Africa. And so it was great for them and for us as well. So basically, I think that yeah, as I said, even if we travel, the best place is always home. So in the end, my message is that I love education. I want to continue to be able to share mutual education with colleagues, patients, and girls, because I think that education is teaching and learning at the same time. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Do we have any questions for ma'am? Then we'll move on to our next speaker. Can Dr. Saiba please introduce Dr. Richard Picard, who's joining us here from the UK. Good morning, sir.
It's our absolute pleasure.
Good afternoon.
to have you here with us, Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard Picard is a consultant at Arunodaya Associates from London, and I had a very delightful personal interaction with him while he visited us at Arunodaya Deseret Eye Hospital, and I'm very excited to know what he does beyond ophthalmology. Please go on.
Fine, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be part of this group. I've been in ophthalmology for a long time. In fact, on Sunday, it will be the 50th anniversary of my actually becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
I would also say that today is a very important anniversary for all of us, because if Charlie Cullman was alive, it would be his 90th birthday. So I think we have something to remember him for, certainly. So let's see if I can get my screen up, and I'll talk to you about my hobbies first. My hobby says I need access. Okay, so where's whole screen?
I'm giving you the access, sir.
Okay. What? Off we go.
Yeah, good.
We see it.
Good. But I can't see anything at the moment. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see that.
So have you got the got my presentation now?
Yes.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Well, you might get an impression from looking at these pictures that I was quite keen on fishing, and you wouldn't be wrong. I caught my first fish at the age of 4 in 1951. It was a little golden rudd. I was fishing with my father, and I have fished every year since then. My father and I used to go away on holidays together. My mother and my sister used to go on separate holidays because they didn't like the idea of going fishing. My latest trip, which I got back from once the virus had really started to take hold in China, was fishing in Mexico. And traveling is something that I like to do very much indeed. I've given over 1,000 lectures in 61 countries across the world, as you can see here. So that's kept me out of mischief. Obviously, at the moment, I can't travel because of the restrictions. So what have I been doing whilst I've had time on my hands? Lucio Barato and I have been editing another book. We published the History of Evolution of Modern Cataract Surgery last year. We're working on a history of refractive surgery, which should be coming out later in the year. A lot of the authors have not had English as their first language, so I've had to translate a lot of their English into what I call English. And that's certainly been taxing. As well as that, with time on my hands, it seemed like a good opportunity to write my life story. So far, I've got to 1995, and I'm about 66,000 words to the good. So that's certainly been something to keep me going. As far as the family is concerned, I have 5 children, and we've been communicating regularly by electronic means. Quite a lot of meetings that I go to have had some fishing attached to them. As we can see here, ASCRS, the Australia meeting, South Africa meeting, American Academy of Ophthalmology, Middle East. Here we are in Thailand, also in East Africa. And all of these, I've managed to get a bit of fishing in while I'm there. So it made the trip a great deal more worthwhile. I thought I'd like to share with you some of the ophthalmic anglers that I've known. And I'm sure you'll recognize an awful lot of these people here. There's a few over here in the UK you may not know, but they're all keen anglers. And I think there's something interesting about this, that when we're out there on the water, my father used to describe fishing as a spiritual bath. And I think that's right, because it means that we're concentrating on what we're doing. We don't have to think about the troubles in the world, whether our patient's doing well or anything like that. We just have to concentrate on what we're doing and what's in front of us. And what's my current interest? My current interest at the moment, and has been for the last 5 years, is a device using a laser to do a capsulotomy. That's called Capsulaser. I do have a financial interest in this product, which I have to declare. So how does selective laser capsulotomy actually work? Well, the laser is pulsed. It's not pulsed, it's continuous. It operates through the absorption of the orange wavelength 590 nanometers on trypan blue, which is stained the capsule and converted type 4 to amorphous collagen. As the collagen undergoes this phase change, it creates the capsulotomy with a rim that has a high degree of elasticity and tear strength associated with amorphous collagen. And it's scanned in a single circular pattern to create the continuous curvilinear capsulotomy. which gives you consistent size and circularity. You can also center it on the pupil or on the visual axis, depending on what you want to do. The device is small. It has a small console, as you can see here. It fits on the underneath of any operating microscope. And we'll now see the device at work. This is an intermittent cataract. The capsule has already been stained, so we're now going to fill the eye with a 2% sodium hyaluronate. This is a very optically clear OVD, which has been developed specifically for the use with the laser. It's important to overfill the capsule. We then apply capsule gel, which is HPMC, to the cornea, so that you can make sure that the patient interface will stick properly. You do preliminary focus so that you get the arrows over here lined up, apply the patient interface, and then centralize the laser. And once you're happily in position, the foot pedal is depressed, and in 0.3 of a second, you'll see the capsulotomy appear. There it is. You didn't even notice it happen. It happened that quickly. The edge is very smooth. It's rolled over, and you get amorphous collagen at this edge, which is what gives it its elasticity. We did an interesting study where we compared paired cadaver eyes between flax capsulotomy using manual technique and capsule laser. And what was surprising was that the capsule laser was able to be that much more elastic than either of the other two. If CCC was 100%, capsule laser was 170%, and flax was about 70% in terms of strength. You see that here. And that was significant. Picard Dick got carried away one of the days, and he was using the laser and decided to stretch the capsule edge, and you can see that it certainly is very elastic. We did an extensive study as part of the CE mark approval, and we compared the results of this study with published literature on femtocataract and manual, looking at the sizing up here, circularity, and centration. And you can see that this device on the left-hand side over here really did remarkably well when compared with the published literature. It's been used in complex cases. Here's some of the cases that Jorge Aleo has done: an intumescent cataract, a small pupil with pseudoexfoliation. And you can also see here that this is a fibrous capsule and a small pupil up here as well. Over 60 surgeons have used the device in over 3,000 eyes on standard cataracts, refractive lens exchange, post-RK, pseudoexfoliation, glaucoma, recessed globes, detached zonules, small pupils, and intumescent cataracts. It's also able to be used underneath a soft shell if you want to do that. 1 year follow-up. This is comparing the same patient. This is the eye that had the laser. This is the eye that didn't, and you can see how different they can look. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you also for asking me to be part of this.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a question from Dr. Arun. Arti, can you unmute? Yeah, please go ahead.
Dr. Richard, I wanted to ask you, after COVID in England, are they taking any special precautions for cataract surgery? Because there's a lot of talk of aerosol from the phaco tips. Does that play any role for you?
Yes, ATP is something which has been discussed. The college in the end has decided that it is a minimal effect, and they're not particularly concerned about it. The college and the United Kingdom and Ireland Cataract Refractive Surgery Society had a webinar earlier this week about restarting cataract surgery. And there are a whole series of protocols that have been put in place so that people can make sure that they're safe, that their patients are safe, that there's not going to be any issue in this regard. Patients will have to self-isolate for 14 days before they come to surgery. They will have to fill in a questionnaire. They will be timed very, very comprehensively so that they have to arrive at a particular time so that there are no more than 1 or 2 patients in any waiting room at any one time, so that there is appropriate social distancing. once they come into theatre, the patients will already have cleaned their hands, they will be gowned, they will have masks on, and the same thing will obviously apply to the staff in theatre. They will then be taken from the theatre so they don't have any interaction with the patient who's coming into theatre, and there's no question that it will slow down the throughput in theatre. We will have to make allowances for this. What we plan to do is actually to have shifts, so that actually there will be different teams coming into theatre. Or maybe people start very early in the morning and do a certain shift. People will come in later. We're planning to work at weekends and so on to make sure that we can get the throughput going.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, next we're going to have Dr. Vaibhav Sethi introduce Dr. Chua from Singapore.
It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Gerard Chua, who's the director of the Asian Diabetic and Retinal Disease Center in Singapore, and also a person who's also mastered the swordfish catching technique. Over to Dr. Chua.
Well, thank you very much. Hi to everybody. Singapore, as you know, we are in the tropics, and the surrounding seas are warm and lots of fish. Like Dr. Picard, I love to fish, but in a different way. I use a spear gun. I am a free diver. I don't use a scuba tank. I hold my breath, and we are dressed in camouflage. Maybe we can show the pictures, the slides.
Yes.
Can we show the slides?
Yeah,
Dr. Aditya. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I will do that. Yes, can you see the slide?
Yes. Yeah, can we have the first slide? So, we are free divers, and we hold our breath. We stay down for maybe about, depending on the depth, for about maybe 2 minutes at about 10 meters. We are fully dressed in camouflage gear, and we wear a weight belt. We carry a spear gun. We have long fins, and we wait for the fish. We hide behind a rock, and we wait for the fish to swim by. And we are very fussy. We only choose fish that we can eat, and we only choose fish of a certain size. And my wife loves fresh fish, and the rest of my family, my mom, my brother, my sister-in-law, they all love fresh fish. So I have 4 freezers in my house, and all my freezers are full. I'm the fishmonger in my village, so everybody comes to me for fresh fish. So let's see the slides. That's my boat. I have a boat, and this boat is a 43-foot carver boat. It's got 2 cabins with attached toilets, a kitchen. It's got a little dinghy at the back with outboard motor, and I am on my boat every weekend. I am not working 78 hours a week like Dr. Steve Charles. The moment Saturday comes, I'm out of Singapore. My boat is in Indonesia, and I'm with my buddies. We are all free divers, spear fishermen. Let's see the next slide. Yep, that's me. Yep, that's me carrying on the right side the 2 trevallies, which I shot in Indonesia in the waters of Bintan. On the left, you can see a range of fish. Some of them are very expensive fish. They taste really good steamed, and some of them taste very good fried. You have a red grouper. You have got the in Australia they call it the tusk parrotfish, and these are very expensive. One fish like that in Singapore would be about $100 US for 1 kilogram. Next slide. And yeah, you can see me carrying a 3 kilogram red grouper on the left. Oh, sorry, if you look at the screen, yeah, on the left. And that was also shot in Bintan, where my boat is. And in the center, you can see these are all, we encountered a school of barramundi in Singapore, off Tuas. Singapore, surprisingly, has a lot of fish. That's because Singapore is a very, I would say, it's a large city, and a lot of people have given up farming and fishing, and they are all in the financial, medical, lawyers, accountants, and nobody wants to be a fisherman. So a lot of fish, and every weekend we go out, the water's clear enough, we shoot a lot of fish. On the right hand side, I shot a very big barramundi. This is off Bintan, off a resort. There was a big rock, and this guy was just came right up to me, and yeah. My wife loves the flesh of barramundi. They're very delicious. White meat. If you grill it with butter and lemon, it's absolutely delicious. Okay, so I think now how does that help me in ophthalmology? Well, firstly, free diving, you have to remain calm. You have to, one thing, because when we want to hold our breath, we need to slow our heart rate. It helps me concentrate as a retinal surgeon. It helps me compose my mind. It also teaches you discipline, because to do free diving, spearfishing, you have to train every day. So every day I run, and every day I skip, I run, just to keep fit so that I can do free diving. Anyway, the other things that I like to do is I like to write books. So I'm a visiting professor in China, in Qingdao. So I've written 12 books, and some of I'm fluent in Mandarin, and I've written 3 Chinese books, and this is my book on retina. And there's another book here on high myopia. One of my interests is high myopia, just like Dr. Parolini from Italy. My passion is macular schisis, and I've also written books in Indonesian, in Malay, for the Indonesian patients that come to Singapore. And these are the other books that I've written on glaucoma and, of course, on retina. And these books, I've sold them on Amazon and also to all my patients in Indonesia and from Malaysia. Now, one of my passions is actually diabetic retinopathy. And I just want to share with everybody, I'm sure all of you have already known about this. But this is something that we've come to realize. Can I have the next slide? Singapore, unfortunately, we like to be first in everything. But in this instance, for diabetic incidence, we are behind the US, luckily. We are not number 1 here. So we have one of the highest incidences of diabetes in the world, of which almost, if you average it out, 11.3% of Singaporeans 18 to 70 years old have diabetes. And we see a lot of really bad diabetic retinopathies in Singapore. And unfortunately, there's a bit of an ethnic difference. The Malays and the Indians tend to have more severe diabetic retinopathy compared to the Chinese. Can I have the next slide, please? We suspect that this is perhaps dietary, and there could be also a genetic element to it. Now, could I have the next slide? Thanks. Yeah. So we also find that, unfortunately, for a lot of us who manage diabetic patients, they have a very often coexistent morbidities. And because of these coexistent morbidities, many of these patients are not easy to manage, because very often, if they happen to be severely diabetic, they may have coexistent renal, peripheral vascular disease. Some of them have had below-knee amputations, and they are busy struggling with seeing one doctor after another. And the eye surgeon may be right, perhaps, at the bottom. But as you and I, we know, the moment they experience visual loss or degradation of the vision, it affects their quality of life. It also affects the way that they manage their health. And what we found is that for these patients, unfortunately, longer duration that they have had diabetes, the higher chance of severe diabetic retinopathy or vision-threatening retinopathy. Now, the latest studies actually have, in a way, validated what we have known by observation, that patients with diabetic maculopathy and good vision you don't really need to aggressively treat them or inject intravitreal Eylea or Lucentis or Avastin at the first sitting. And you just need to monitor them closely if possible and watch them 3-monthly and OCT visual acuity. But there's a group of patients that we find, especially in the Malay Indian population, where once you see that they have moderately severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and it progresses to the severe in a short period of time, we now know that actually proactively preemptive treatment with laser, PRP, or intravitreal anti-VEGF actually has shown to prevent progression to the severe vision-threatening retinopathy. Before that, we suspected. And a lot of times for these patients, because you can lose them to follow-up unless they're very compliant. I'm not sure what it's like in other countries, but even in Singapore, supposedly affluent, many of these patients struggle under the medical bills. Singapore, our medical system has subsidized healthcare, but it requires co-payment. So many of them, they do pay about 30% of the bill. And even then, because there are so many other disease conditions that they have to manage, some of them have to manage dialysis bills, some of them have to manage a lot of medication for heart failure. So they don't have enough money to perhaps see us so often. So sometimes if you don't see these guys, for example, from moderately severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, you miss them for 9 months, the next time you see them, they may have a vitreous hemorrhage, and you miss the chance. So this study, in a way, validates our observation, and that we actually are now more proactive. For patients that progress rapidly, I would see them every 2 months. If I think they're non-compliant, I may actually do a pan-retinal photocoagulation at that first time and watch them. Sorry, I have a bit of echo. Okay. Now, in the latest Panorama trial, most of us retinal surgeons would use Avastin as a first line. But what they found is that with Eylea, at the 2-year follow-up, these patients were most likely to see an improvement in their disease severity. But I'm not sure what it's like in your country, but in Singapore, patients pay the full amount for the drug, Eylea. And I'm not sure, but in Singapore, 1 vial would cost about 1,300 Singapore dollars or 1,000 US. Whereas Avastin is a lot more affordable. For us, 1 vial of Avastin can be divided among 12 patients. And so it ends up splitting the cost to maybe about 50 US per patient. So I'm not sure what it's like in other countries. But normally we start off as first line in Singapore using Avastin. And if they don't respond well, we then move on to Eylea. Can we have the next slide, please? And again, in the Clarity trial, I think it was shown that patients with proliferative diabetic retinopathy had much better visual acuity outcomes with Eylea than with just PRP. And again, in the protocol T extension, you also find that the visual acuity was better at 5 years than at the baseline. Now, what it does show is that such patients, unfortunately, do need constant monitoring. And I don't know about what happens in other countries, but non-compliance with follow-up is a big issue even in Singapore, even in an affluent society. And again, I think the other anti-VEGF drugs all of you are familiar with now, broadly Suzimab, Abicipar, and I'm sure you also know that Faricimab. I mean, all these you have seen. And I'm not sure about the costing of these drugs, but in Singapore, costing unfortunately does play a large part in deciding which drug to choose. Now, for what I do, again, the next slide, yeah. Normally, we see a lot of diabetics in my practice. I do a lot of surgical retina, but I also do medical retina. And if on the first follow-up we do not see any diabetic retinopathy, I just see them yearly. Mild, non-proliferative, I see them 6 monthly. But the moderate ones, I watch them closely. The moderate ones, I'll see them every 2 monthly if possible, and I monitor them for progression and increase in hemorrhages in many different quadrants. The moment I see ERMAs, I would definitely treat them. So I'm not sure how the rest of the retinal surgeons would, but this is what I would do in my Asian Diabetic and Retinal Disease Center. And our database here, we have about 30,000 patients, so we are quite busy. Well, but thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, I'm going to ask Dr. Weber to introduce Dr. Edward Valagala from Poland. Dr. Webb.
It's my honor to introduce Professor Edward Valagala. And I had the opportunity to visit his center as well as be with him at the conference recently, just before COVID actually did do a bit of a problem globally. And an excellent orator and an excellent corneal surgeon, and got to learn a lot of things. Even being a retina surgeon myself, I got to learn a lot of new techniques in the anterior segment domain. So I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Valagala. Please, sir, maybe have your presentation.
Good afternoon for all. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. It was really last conference in Poland, maybe first and last in this year. It was in March, 8 March, and we met, and I think it was excellent conference about anterior segment surgery diagnostic. And can you show my presentation? Yes, I'd like to show my slides.
Do you?
Yes.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Can you play from your end, sir? Because I think we've got.
Dr. Edward, can you just click on screen share? You see that below on the left. Just click on screen share.
Philip.
And then select yes. I allowed you. Now you can share your presentation.
Czekaj. Cały ekran.
I think you'll have to do that again because we're not able to see your screen.
Yes. I can. It's not working.
Can we have Dr. Hudson present? In that meantime, I'll fix your slide.
Now?
Yeah, I get the. Can you just try once? Just click on entire screen and share.
Entire screen.
And then share.
Full screen, yeah.
You will have to select the entire screen in the center of the. Yes, we see it now.
Yes.
You can start the presentation. Thanks.
Nie. Ale nie widzę tego teraz. Okej. Can you see my presentation? Because I can't see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. I am Edward Wylęgała. I come from Poland. I live in the southern part of Poland. It's near 100 kilometers from Kraków, a very beautiful city. And my city is Katowice. There are 3 universities. Between them, one is a medical university. When I am working with my wife. My wife is maxillofacial surgeon. And what about my hobby? My hobby is, of course, hiking and trekking, especially with my family, with my wife. You can see here our trip to glaciers in different parts of the world. It was mentioned before and showed Perito Moreno in Argentina many times ago, and our last visit was in Tasman Glacier in New Zealand. It was in January this year. I think it was only one long haul in this year. But my passion is, of course, climbing. Climbing on skis on the mountains. Sometimes it takes 5 to 7 hours for me, and particularly beautiful. It's time when I am on the top of the summit. I can admire the surrounding landscape. It's beautiful. Sometimes it takes me 5 to 7 hours for top, and only 20 minutes down. But it's beautiful time, especially when can I do this with very high speed. And what about my activities? I live in Katowice, near my hospital, and every day I go to my hospital. It is only 12 minutes from this house, through this beautiful garden, near the very old monastery, to my hospital. It's 12 minutes. And my clinic, it's 32 beds in patients, and very well equipped. We have all new equipment, especially in operations theater. The last, it's Artivo 3D microscopes, are beautiful, and of course we have some lasers. It's a Femto Zimmer Z8, and also excimer lasers, and we have a very good staff. And what about scope of research? The main is, of course, hereditary disease of the eye, especially corneal dystrophies and macular dystrophies. Not macular dystrophies of the cornea, but also of the retina. And of transplantology, I have been using these techniques for many times, and I performed 3,000 or more keratoplasties, and of course imaging in ophthalmology and innovations in surgery. And I'd like to show you a small video. It's my technique. I have used this technique, big bubble, for the last 20 years, and I have started in 2000, and I like it, this technique, and I don't use some special devices for this, only a simple needle. And the most beautiful picture, this is a Deseret membrane, like ice field, like glacier. You can see this part of the eye. And the last, my scope is, of course, stem cells, limbal stem cells, and I am involving in the clinical trial with Holoclar. Holoclar is a medicine with stem cells, limbal stem cells, very expensive, but it's excellent, I think, drug for this. According to Graziella Pellegrini, it's only one drug with stem cells in the medicine. we can use it. We have used this technique for 20 patients, and the results are very beautiful. Of course, we can use also SLED, but you can see here, this is a very beautiful picture, I think, with a scaffold of these stem cells cultured after 6 months, and confirm that we have in this transplant 3 to 5% of stem cells amongst the cultured limbal stem cells. And I think that it will be time for traveling. This picture, it's a picture was taken 7 years ago near the island Patmos, and I have received a message from my university that I won a competition for a chair of ophthalmology clinic. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Since we're running out of time, we'll take questions in the end together. Can you just press on stop share? You'll have to press on stop sharing.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to
yes,
ask
of course. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Dr. Sahiba Sethi to introduce Dr. Jean-Pierre from France.
So it's lovely to introduce Dr. Jean-Pierre from France. And,
a little louder.
So he's a medical director of Vision House, Paris, France, and a consultant at the National Center of Ophthalmology in Paris. So we'd love to hear about your life and work, sir.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I think you can hear me. I would like to try to share my screen. Thank you very much for all the Sethi family for what they organize. It's a wonderful idea to organize this type of meeting around the world, and during this special period that we are living. So I'm going to try to share my. Can you let me share this?
You just have to click on entire screen and
yes.
share.
Yes, I tried to do it. Yes, share. Share. Share.
You have to select the entire screen first.
Mm-hmm. You are sharing. Wait.
Do you want me to share your presentation?
Yes, you can. Yes, if you can.
Yeah.
I send you my communication if it's possible for you. I don't know why it's possible.
Can you see it, sir? It's on the screen, sir. Dr. Rosenberg?
Yes. I'm listening to you. I try to share my.
That's okay. Can you see it on the screen? I've shared it for you.
Yes, I stop sharing and I go back.
Yeah, just come to Chrome.
I've sent you my communication if it's possible for you to show it.
No, I've got it. I've got it already.
Yes, is it possible for you to show it?
It's possible. It's already on. Dr. Rosenbaum, can you see me?
Niektóre są fajne, bo on na przykład powiedział ten z Singapuru.
Dr. Edward, I would request you to mute your mic, please.
Okay.
Dr. Rosenberg, you will have to come on to the video conferencing link and you will be able to see the presentation Dr. Aditya is sharing.
I'm already sharing your presentation.
We can see the presentation, Dr. Rosenberg.
Can you show? I've sent it by email if you can have it.
We are able to see it. Are you able to see it?
Because I can't share. I don't know. I don't understand why.
No, please come back to your browser. Please come back to the conference. Please come back to conference. The webinar. Please come back to the webinar.
You can click on the Chrome you were on earlier.
Yes, I'm connected, but I'm not.
You're able to see all the videos now?
Can you see our face?
In order to enable screener.
Yeah, Dr. Aditya, you can share it now. He's on the page.
Screen share. Please wait for Silas Center.
Yeah, are you able to see the presentation now?
Can you give me permission to it's Celal Center.
So just say cancel. So just say cancel, please. Come back to the webinar. It's already there. Your slides are there.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you again, and I'm honored to participate with you in this very interesting webinar. I think you can next slide, please.
So please go
yes.
ahead.
In fact, can you? Yes. First, yes. Can you hear me correctly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, current time in France, we have a hard lockdown from March 15th to May 1st. It takes about 6 weeks. The lockdown has ended on May 1st, but we have some constraints, medical constraints, limitation in surgery, distance limitation from home 100 kilometers, beach are forbidden, restaurant, coffee, hostel are closed, and you know that is very important in France. Next slide, please. Next slide. Is it possible to go to next slide?
No, I'm on the next slide. Can you see my slide?
We can see the slide, Dr. Aditya, the next one.
Yes, can you show the next slide, please?
Yeah. Is this the slide?
Yes, thank you. So during this first phase, during this hard locking down, I've decided to go on and see emergent. Can I see the next before? Slide before, please. Yes. Yes, we stay at this. During this first period, I decided to go on and see emergency during the first week, then emergency and essential treatment during the second and third weeks. I had many discussions with colleagues who want to stop their activity, but I decided to do my job of medical doctor and to go on my work near the patients. So I organized my center, which name is Vision West, just near Paris. The first problem was the safety of the staff. Staff was concerned at the beginning. So I had to explain them that they are young, not many risks for them, and I had more risk personally, but I considered that my job was to go on. and I let them to decide what they wanted to do. The most of them go on and work with me. The second problem was the safety of patients. They are waiting outside. We see them one by one, no accompanying except indispensable necessity. One or two patients in waiting rooms. We draw a care path. The first thing the patient do is to wash hands or to put hydroalcoholic solutions. Then they go to secretary. We have protection with plexiglass. Then they go to waiting room. The safety during exams. Limit discussion. The patient keep their hands on these. They don't put anything on the tables or on tables. We don't speak when we are under 1 meter. Of course, mask, gloves, plexiglass, shields, or biomicroscope. The next one, please. Can you show the next slide?
It's the next slide, sir. Can you see my next slide?
Yes, okay. So the report of this first period. At this first period, I had about 15% of activity during the first week, then 30%, then third week, about 60% of activity, and now I am in consultation at about 80% of activity. I've seen many emergency, some were very important, like bilateral papillar edema in a young boy, 20 years old, retinal tears, iritis, and so on. Cataract surgery begins slowly now with many restrictions. We think that things will return to normal in about 2 weeks. Next slide, please. I try to do it manually. Yes, what do we do with our time when we are hyperactive? Of course, we think ophthalmo. We can speak surgery, but for surgeon, if we can't operate, it's like virtual reality. I've participated in international webinars, like the one organized by City Family, Surviving the Star. I participated with Professor Arunodaya on webinar about a new multifocal IOL intensity. I work on the new concept of diffractive of multifocal IOL. I work also with Dr. Kiris Abzalag, who is president of the French Society of Refractive and Cataract Surgery, to find a technical way of multifocal IOL assessment. I work also on communications on multifocal IOLs in Next Sapphire and perhaps ESCRS. I try to have the next, please. Yes, but we have time to spend them. Of course, most time to spend with our family, but also time to think to other projects. I've tried to develop a post-COVID smartphone application without tracking to be in agreement with liberty laws. And I don't know at this moment if I will obtain the agreement, but I'm working around this application. I think also about the future of ophthalmology. Telemedicine is very interesting, but I think in ophthalmology we need something more. And I try to find a way to have automatic machine like automatic refractor and automatic modular system who can be connected, and it should be for me the future of ophthalmology. I'm going to try in next week's system coming from Visionics which can permit to examine patients connected even in other places. I work also, of course, with Erudacia about this lens to obtain optimal light distribution in multifocal IOL. And of course, I would like to now to speak about my passion. My passion is for modern paintings, and for ophthalmologists, it creates a wonderful bridge between these two disciplines. Eye is a sensory organ which allow. Can I say the? Yes, it's a mirror. It's a mirror of our soul. But eye is only an antenna. And yes, the next one, please. Yes, eye is only an antenna because we see almost with our brain. Around us, many things are not visible. We can see only between 380 nanometers spectral to 705 750 nanometers visible. I'm sorry because I have echo in my computer. I hope it's okay for you. And so what I wanted to say is many things around us are not visible. The most apparition of eye symbol came in the old Egypt with Horus eye. Horus was this Egyptian god, and Horus eye was a protection eye. Next one, please. Now I'm going to speak about modern art in France. Until 19th century, art was figurative and visible. The symbolism and allegories was destinated to people who could understand that. Of course, if we see these paintings from Léonard de Vinci, this drawing from Léonard de Vinci, La Quadrature du Cercle, we can understand many symbols in this drawing. In 19th century in France, revolt against established order, social and scientific upheaval will allow the appearance of abstract art. The discovery of photography, free of the obligation to the representation of reality, and art become provocative. Next one, please. Can I have the next one? Yes, in France, we had Monet with Impressionism. Can I have the slide before, please? It's very important to. Yes, in the 19th century, artists are fascinated by scientific upheaval, color perception. Until 1807, the perception of colors were physical, coming from Newton, and Goethe, with the German man, has written a theory of colors in 1807, which will influence all modern paintings. Colors perception is subjective, and there is influence of light on color perception. Also Chevreul in 1830 with Loi du contraste simultané. In fact, we can see that night is not black. Yeah? Night can be blue. Next one, please. I'm sorry, it doesn't work very well. If you, can I have the next slide, please? Yes, this permits the painters like Turner, English painter, to show these paintings in which we can see dissolution of colors by light. Next one, please. In France, with Impressionism, Claude Monet. Claude Monet has painted 30 times the Cathédrale de Rouen to show the light influence on colors perceptions. Next one, please. Can I have the next one? Yes, the wave theory of light in 1801 induced connection between paintings, perception, and music. Next one, please. We can see Van Gogh, Klimt, Kupka. Next one, please. Can I have this one? Yes, can I have the... Yes, in fact, I'm sorry, the connection is not so good. So I would like to say that all these discoveries permit the apparition of modern art, and so I would like to show you the bridge between the connection between ophthalmology and the way of what we can see, and we see with our brains, we see with our culture. Thank you very much, and sorry for the connection. Thank you for SETI family, and thank you for all, and it's a pleasure, and thank you very much.
Dr. Aditya, are you muted? We are not able to hear you. No.
Who's the next speaker, Dr. Aditya?
Dr. Hudson Nakamura can go next.
Right.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hudson Nakamura. He is he's the Assistant Professor, Ophthalmology Residency and Retinal Fellowship at the Eye Bank Foundation of Goiás. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
In the central part of Brazil. Over to you, sir. Or do you need to unmute here?
Okay, now I can speak. Yeah, thank you.
I've already done that.
Before I start my questioning, and before I start my presentation, I would like to ask, in English and French, est-ce que vous pensez que la télémédecine marche bien pour les patients d'aujourd'hui? Do you think telemedicine works good for the patients today?
I think we'll skip the question and you carry on with the presentation, then you can answer later.
I will ask again the question.
Dr. Aditya, we're not able to hear you if you have to refresh it. Yeah.
And est-ce que vous pensez que la télémédecine marche bien pour les patients d'aujourd'hui? Do you think telemedicine works good for the patients today?
Well, in India, it's working quite well. We have a very efficient system. Let's carry on with the presentation of Dr. Hudson now.
Okay, I was asking Dr. Jean-Pierre Rosenbaum, but next time I'll ask.
His French is not very good.
Okay, no problem. And I'm gonna share my screen, but before sharing my screen, I wanna tell you about what I do, what I like doing the first. And judo and wrestling are part of my life. Even when I practiced it, actually I was training retina in Toronto, Canada, I used to play wrestling over there and judo as well. And my father started judo in my state here in Brazil, the state of Goiás, in 1957. And I played judo since I was born. So, you know, it's a passion. And that helps me a lot in doing surgeries because it doesn't get me any shake. Because it's a concentrating sport and it's so good that keeps me up to date and up to shape into my job. And I'll share with you my presentation now. Let me just go to screen share here and okay, that's all right. I'll share it. Okay, and starting. I guess you are seeing my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Can you see? Okay. So yeah, I'm a retina surgeon presently at the Eye Bank Foundation in Goiânia, Brazil, and did my retina training in CPCO in Goiânia, Brazil, here in the city. And then I went to Toronto for 2 years of a retinal fellowship, and then actually I was observing first, and then I was being trained by Dr. Diveni, Dr. Lem, and Dr. Harford, Dr. Berger, and I had the opportunity also to go and see some surgeries with Dr. Steve Ershinov. And actually, I participated into many competitions in my state here in judo. And after judo, I switched to wrestling. But before I switched to wrestling, I did many competitions here in our state. And in 2006, recently, I took part in the World Masters Championship in Fort Lauderdale in the United States. And I participated into 4 World Championships in wrestling all over the world, in Canada, Bulgaria, Switzerland, Italy as well. And also 2 World Championships, 4 World Championships, but 2 Pan American Championships as well, in Mexico and Cuba. And this is my presentation for sports. These are my passions in judo and wrestling. Sorry, just a moment. I switched to the video here. It didn't play good, but I have the video separate here, and in sports. And this is my presentation in wrestling. Can you see the video now? Can you see the video?
Yes, we can.
It was in Mexico, 1994, the Pan American Championship.
Wow. You can announce it with Santon.
And it's good that I was wrestling the guy from Argentina, And still, it was a young getting experience for ophthalmology in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. And this whole thing, this sports, can give us a preparation for the life and also for studying ophthalmology, because we have to do residency first and before getting into retina. So this is very good for your control. And I love sports. And this is tough. People might think that it might be difficult to go over, doing sports like that and then doing surgery, but you don't get a shape in the hand. So you just need to concentrate and to be up to date with yourself physically and mentally. This is very important. And this maneuver, you get some points, and this is cool. This match was years ago when we didn't have, I think, 1994, we didn't have still the CD player, too many years ago. And we learned a lot out of that. And it's good to practice any sport, any art, anything that makes you escape from the hustle and bustle from today's efforts, and that helps a lot. And this is almost finishing now, and I have here, I'll just forward a little bit, and that goes over. So it was very good to be part of this world, doing the sport, and also this the end of the wrestling match. So we have to touch the opponents back on the floor for quite a while, usually 3 seconds. It's called touch, and the match is over. So it's good to participate. And also coming now towards the world of ophthalmology, especially retina, and how would that help? Doing the sport and doing something besides the sport. This is interesting to know that I have here some retina real time in some retinal surgeries. But before going to the surgeries, I will show you this PowerPoint here, and I will share it right now. And the same presentation. And how do I do macular surgery? You might think that doing the wrestling or judo, then you cannot do macular surgery. But another thing is that I have as a characteristics from myself is that I operate inverted. I do retina surgery without using the inverted. That I learned by myself. I was not taught this during my retinal fellowships, and but then I developed this technique. And the beginning, that gave me more time to, not to waste time inverting and inverting the image. And then all types of microscopes, I go with them without a problem. I like Leica, I like Zeiss, and all sorts of microscopes. And then I have this presentation from the ophthalmology things. It's going to run smoother now. As you see, this is the ADEH foundation, and I'm presenting this foveal after actual exchange, the foveal ILM-PL. You gotta get very concentrated and have a lot of control. And I go straight to the fovea. Some people think or get a little afraid of going straight to the fovea, but you have to be aware and under control. This is no cut. This is real-time epiretinal fibrovascular hemorrhagic diabetic retinopathy membrane. It is coming out easily from the macula. You just have to find the good plane and just remove it. And this patient had been sick for quite a while, and his vision was very bad after the surgery and after some months. And the vision has got back to normal because we get some photocoagulation laser, and see the result here. And this is something just showing that I did the thing and surgery inverted. And that's about it. And I guess I'm gonna stop sharing. I think stop sharing my screen, and that's about it. You know, I like doing sport and also the ophthalmology, linking both of them because we need to have a concentration. We need to know what we are doing. We need to be prepared both physically and mentally. And the sport, and as you guys, you almost all you will have some issues and sport and whatever thing to help on that because we need to be under control. And we cannot be under control of our patients if we are not under control of ourselves. And that's something that amazes me, you know. And hopefully, Japan will be hosting the Olympics next year. We all are going to watch it. Thank you.
Next, we're running out of time. Next, we're going to have Dr. Irene Golani, whose idea.
Dr. Hudson, can you please click on stop sharing? I can have Dr. Golani on the screen.
Whose idea it was, along with Dr. Arun Sethi, to get all the doctors together and present the package of life within ophthalmology. So, I think you have Dr. Golani's videos, please.
Give me 2 minutes, I'll be back. Sure. All right.
Yes, sir.
Hello, hello. Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay, I have to get back. First of all, I got to see a few of the presentations. I think it was fantastic, bringing the real gist out of within ophthalmology, an amazing profession we all have, rather than waiting for doing things outside. Can we start the videos?
Yeah.
So it's all about passion and how we can weave it into everyday life, rather than wait till 5 o'clock and then play golf. That's what I don't understand. I'm coming. Please pardon me if I break off in between. This feels like deja vu, outside the class most of the time.
Can you have the volume up?
Did you play the first video?
Yeah, we played it.
Okay.
We can see the video.
So this may not be needed because this was, if I wasn't available or able to come in, so it's basically in absentia.
You want me to play the passion one?
That's the first one, yes?
Yeah, play the first one, sir.
Okay, I need to get back in.
I think can we have the first video and can we have the volume up?
I can't see it.
Can we have the second video now? And then the third. Also unmute, sir, you think?
Yeah, I'll do that.
So today, this is very special because most people talk about beyond. And I really believe our profession is unilaterally amazing. What a privilege for us to make people see. None of us do any stuff that's dirty. We don't deal with dirty fluids. We sit down and operate with music. It's just amazing what we get to do. So within our 9 to 5, we should be able to build all our passions, like I've said. If you like to dance, dance with the patient, like to sing during surgery, and really enjoy what we do. And that's very important because I don't see many ophthalmologists smiling and being amazed about what they do. Giving people vision is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Stop doing cookie-cutter work. That's the biggest thing I want to talk about all the time. Now, the video that's going to come up very soon, sorry I'm speaking fast, I have to get back in the room, is laser scar. This is the biggest reason surgeons lie to me to understand how there is no need for transplant in any scar. I repeat, any scar. 28 years of taking scars to 2020 without transplant. You can do a transplant in 22 minutes. I refuse. Take a scar, believe that they see. Stop calling these things irregular and nightmares. Focus, refract, perform, celebrate. So look at this next video. It's 6 minutes and it's about scars and how I look at them. And here's my fun thing that I talk about these things. Don't get scared of scars. Similarly, don't get scared of arcing cuts. Once you can handle these cases, you're a master. You're a master. A carpenter can do LASIK, cataract, and smile. Remember this, please. But if you do this, you're a master refractive surgeon because you'll fear nothing. There is nobody who's not a candidate, and you can reverse anybody's complication. Excuse me. Do 2020. When I say 2020, we are surgeons. We don't talk glasses. Again, please, these are not guarantees to patient, but this is a guarantee to yourself when we see patient. So if we can please have the scar video, you can take over.
The third video. Third video. The scientific. Yeah.
You have it.
To our advantage. In the five-S algorithm, you can see the impact of the corneal scar on vision and determine the patterned approach of corneal rehabilitation and lasers or direct
I
laser.
don't see it.
Get up, Aditya.
When you're looking at this video, please.
Yeah, okay.
Close.
The refractive
Perfect. That
status.
sounds like the start music.
Using corneoplastic principles, we can use these very factors and reverse them to our advantage.
Okay, I have to get back.
In the 5S algorithm, you can see the impact of the corneal scar on vision and determine the patterned approach of corneal rehabilitation and laser or direct laser and straight reshaping to vision. The refraction is the mainstay of the corneal scar algorithm, where vision better than 20/30 suggests straight laser PRK, while less than 20/40 following a hard contact lens trial can determine staged laser in 2 stages or a scar peel followed by myopic laser ablation. For sake of simplicity, I have divided corneal scars into on-cornea scars, like these scars, which are above the Bowman's membrane and lead to a camouflaged topography, as you see here, and misleading refractive error. The incorneal scars, which actually become part of the cornea and are directly responsible for the topography and have a direct correlate to the refractive error, and hence can be lasered through. Instead of laser PTK that chases the scar and distorts the shape, why not reshape the cornea and take it straight to vision? Let's see this algorithm in action. This is a case of a dense corneal scar following a herpetic infection 20 years ago. Notice the circular light reflex here is D-shaped due to high astigmatism. With fast movements, take off the epithelium except in the area of the scar, leaving that for the last. Following my corneoplastic principles, herpetic scars usually become part of the cornea, so you'll see a smooth surface at this point. Notice despite the smoothness, the opacity is in its area. That doesn't matter. We will proceed with the refractive ablation at this point. At this point, we will apply mitomycin C for about 30 seconds. You may even rub the surface or gently place this disc-shaped wet soaked in mitomycin so it applies to the central cornea. Notice now, on application of BSS solution, the light reflex, which was D-shaped, has now become circular. This translates to vision. In on-corneal scars like these, they can be peeled off right under the laser in what I call a resistance-guided technique, where you pull on the scar but make sure you remove it completely in one piece using the rest of the cornea as your resistance platform. Here it is. This is then followed by laser PRK to emetropia. In deeper on-corneal scars like these, they can also be peeled off using patience and a resistance-guided technique again to gently peel them off the rest of the cornea. Once again, try and maintain the entire piece as a single removal technique. Once it clears the visual axis, you can proceed with the refractive laser PRK ablation as seen here. Mitomycin C application. Complete central clarity to an excellent outcome. Indirectly remove the scar straight to emetropia. Even variants like buttonhole complications of LASIK can be treated as an in-corneal scar. Let's use our algorithm.
Thank you, Dr. Golani, for that scientific talk and knowing about what's life within ophthalmology. I think it's been a brilliant webinar so far, and the contribution from Sir has been quite massive on this. Next, we're going to have Mr. Anish Suneja, and I want Dr. Arun Sethi to introduce him.
It gives me great pleasure to invite Anish Suneja. He's the man who actually supports ophthalmology by being a practice management expert. He runs the One Flow program, and he worked a lot to actually teach ophthalmologists in the US how to survive with COVID and how to do the organization of the clinic. He also has a lot of hobbies he's going to talk of. And more important, we hope that he'll be able to use this technology of One Flow to help Indian ophthalmology on a charitable basis so that we with our volumes can be able to deliver the services. And this will be followed by the Arunodaya video by Dr. Aditya. Anish, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can everyone see my screen?
You will have to select the entire screen and click on share, Dr. Anish.
Okay, I thought I did that.
I had given you the access. If you can just try it again for us.
Sure, no problem.
Yes, we do see your screen now.
Okay, all right. First of all, Dr. Sethi and the entire family, thank you so much for having me. I hope this content is relevant, and it's just great to be part of this esteemed faculty and the team. So my name is Anish Suneja, and my expertise is in lean manufacturing, which you may have heard of. And for the last 14 years, I've had a chance to work throughout the country, develop tools and methodologies to look at the entire system of the patient flow. Although I've done work in all parts of healthcare, ophthalmology and in clinics is where there has been a lot of application and application of some of the tools that we've come up with. So thank you for taking the time. I think I'm not sure if this will be relevant or not, but I'm a chemical engineer by training. And for some of you, this might have been an easy transition from engineering to medicine. For me, I came across a book called Lean Thinking while I was an engineer and had an opportunity to apply it in chemicals. And it had such a deep impact on me, speaking of passion, that I had to go do something called Vision Quest. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but you go off in a land, a safe land, national forest, and spend 3 days on just water. And essentially, you're looking to make some major decision. And so out of that, I came up being hungry and thirsty with the decision to switch from engineering to what I do now. This may be a thing of the past, but I think, my hobbies, my passion is my work, but also I just love visiting different countries and seeing different cultures. So for vacations, I've been to, a few countries around the world. And for the lean work that I'm about to share with you, I've been sort of all different parts of the United States. So I just feel like the luckiest person to be doing this. So for my first project in ophthalmology, I worked with Dr. Dennis Hahn, who's a retina specialist at the Eye Institute in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I live. And watching his clinic, their clinic, what I saw was patients coming out of exam rooms, for example, wanting to know when will I be seen. Doctors were not so busy and then slammed. Clinics often ran into lunches and late times. And, from an engineer's perspective, it just seemed very chaotic to me. I enjoy systems, I enjoy what I do, and I just, this did not make any sense to me at all. It's almost like everyone was acting like they've never seen a patient before, and every time they came out of a room, they had to figure out what to do next. So translating lean for ophthalmology, essentially, we can look at this from anywhere, from patient care start to end. And today's world, it might even be important to look at all the steps that the patients take from the time they have a need to the time their care is complete. Obviously, some of it may be done with telemedicine and some of it in person. But I'd like to share with you kind of our focus, how to look at these tools from essentially a clinic visit. And our goal is to have a patient come in and leave in a predictable time without any wasted time for the patient. And in order to do that, we have to sort of break up our activities. And turns out that when we start to look at who is interacting with the patient and when, lean calls value-added activities something that the patients are there for. That means any time with the staff or the physician is value-added. What's wasteful is actually the rest of the story, where people are located, how they're interacting with the patient outside the room, they're escorting patients, they're looking for supplies. So it's all of that we call a waste bucket. And so to get specific, each flow will be different depending on your clinic and layout. But in this case, I'm sharing with you the breakdown of a patient flow in segment. Patients check in for a couple of minutes. They may wait in our main lobby for 15 minutes. They get some sort of tech workup. This is the retina example. They may then wait for another in the main lobby or a sub-wait. They may get a test, and then they wait. They eventually get roomed. Then they wait for the doctor. Then the doctor sees them, and they might have someone like a scribe stay in the room. And essentially, the overall visit in this case is 88 minutes. But what Lean calls value added is just the 26 minutes of the interaction time with everyone. And so the wasted time for the patient is 62 minutes or over an hour. And I've seen this around the country here, not familiar with how you are set up, but there's just a huge opportunity. What we're looking for is virtually just the waste involved in taking care of patients. This may result in, as physicians, you may wait. You may have work that, it's not there in the morning and then it just slams, or there's waves of work. Human talent, we're not necessarily engaging everyone to be able to think about the next step and how they can help with the flow of the patient. And number 6, a lot of motion. There's just, depending on the layout, just a lot of motion for the staff, for the patients in most clinics. So I'll share with you a couple of examples of where we started at the Eye Institute was simply by organizing things. Simple things like where the supplies are, Are they organized in an efficient way that people can get at them efficiently? And there's a system called 5 S's, which is listed on the right-hand side: sort, stabilize, shine, standardize, and sustain. It's one of the foundational methodologies in Lean. The same applies to patients. Patients, their stages, who they are. It became important to make all of that work visible, and here we use a magnetic whiteboard with patient names which are HIPAA compliant, indicated in the stage they're in. So everyone is clear on what is going on and with whom. Over time, then we've developed that magnetic whiteboard into a software tool that is, right now it's available in the US, but we essentially think of that whiteboard into a software version. But then with that, we can collect a lot of information, a lot of data that helps with schedules, or helps with staffing. This is all the part of the patient experience that you may or may not be aware of, especially if you're seeing the patients, when you're taking care of them. One of the discoveries for me as an outsider is that the physician's time needs to be treated differently than everyone else's time. So here's Dr. Dennis Hahn. So our goal is to create a system, whether through schedules, communication, rooming, that the doctor can go from patient to patient without interruption. And that means that just so many patients are ready for the doctor, and the doctor has very clear pathway and communication so that the doctor's time is not wasted, which is, I can't tell you how many places I see this, not an application of this principle about bottlenecks. So long story short, in the Eye Institute, we were able to reduce patient wait times in retina by 85%. The process changes freed up 1 hour out of every 4, so more patients could be seen. And this was all done through staff engagement, and so their satisfaction went up by 25%. So in medical economics, Dr. Hahn wrote an article about his process changes, and then later he and I co-authored a book called Synchrony, which is available on Amazon. So, in light of the current changes, I have been thinking about, here's an example of a patient flow. So all the steps that the patient might take in a clinic just to get to see a physician, where they're teching, where they're getting their pictures taken and checking and check out. And all of the stars are really with the potential for exposure to other patients just because of the movement of the patient involved. In rethinking, I've had a chance to help redesign some clinic spaces. It dramatically reduces where the patient is in the clinic because we move the patient less, and there also, as a result, there's less exposure. So it's something that may be worth considering, if you are considering in the future how you might redesign the flow to be safer and also to be efficient. So here are a couple of examples of actual designs that have resulted in just walking distance reduced, productivity gains, wait time reduced with happy patients from a couple of designs here in the U.S., one in Michigan, one in Colorado. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and hopefully this was valuable information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We learned a lot from your talk. Going with the theme of today, we're going to present a few videos of Team City, Team Arunodaya, and how what is our passion and how do we incorporate that. So can you see my first video? That's the team. That's Dr. Rosenbaum, Dr. Schultz, Dr. Saiga receiving the award. Now, recently we've all been chefs in lockdown period, and singers, and dancers, and travelers, and we're doing some webinars, and teaching some music. and we start early in the morning. And some exercise, yoga, and taking out precautions. If you've seen our YouTube channels, few of us are good singers and painters. So as far as passion goes, that's us. And next, we're going to talk about how this passion translates to our work. So as a group, not only do we have similar hobbies, but we also believe in reversing the tide of cerebral blindness. And with our project, no major charitable cost, we've been able to give aid to these patients with the CM studios. That's the project, Reaching the Only. And as we know, coming to the scientific part of our presentation, as we know that, Aarti, can you mute Dr. Hudson? Or we can remove him. I think he's
Dr. Hudson's video is stuck. I'm not able to mute him. We'll have to basically...
Can you remove him?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that.
So the last part is the scientific part. So let's go back to the OR, where science and art meet together. So coming to our presentation of the scientific part, this is also submitted for the ASTS Film Festival this time.
Continuous capsular rexes in an intumescent cataract is always a challenge because of the raised intralenticular pressure caused by the liquefied cortex.
Continuing with our passion,
risk of rapid tear
this video was labeled as Don't Cry For Me Argentina after the famous song.
In intumescent cataract, there are two pressurized intralenticular compartments, anterior and posterior. Even after aspiration of intralenticular fluid from the anterior compartment, capsular rexus extension may occur because of increased posterior intralenticular pressure, which pushes the lens upwards. During capsular rexus, you have to change the vector force from pulling the anterior capsule to lifting a capsular flap. Femto laser assisted cataract surgery and Zepto are other techniques of creating continuous capsular rexus in intumescent cataracts.
The time has come.
We present hold the door technique for a successful continuous rexus. This is my technique, which is cost effective and has given me 100% success. in advanced intraocular cataract, that patients in our part of the world present with. After construction of the main incision, the anterior chamber is filled with adequate OVD. The strata forceps is used to pinch and lift the flap of the anterior capsule. You can appreciate the technique in slow motion also. This technique does not require surgeons to acquire any additional skill or equipment.
Okay.
And reproducible. Start with the regular main phaco incision, as always. Fill the
So that was our 2 minutes of each passion, how the passion converts into work, and our scientific paper. So I think with that, we'll move on to a vote of thanks, which I'll ask Dr. Reena to present to all the panel and the attendees of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aditya. I think, I hope we've all enjoyed the webinar, which actually was a different concept of life within ophthalmology. It's different because it gave us an insight and a take on a journey as an ophthalmologist. It's not just surgery, but there's much, much more beyond or within our ophthalmology premiers. It's my honor and privilege now to give a vote of thanks to all our illustrious speakers, who not only have just we today for the first time, I think we've actually got to know them better, because we know their surgical skills and their minds, but then hobbies are something which really tells so much about your techniques and why you're doing these techniques and how they've come to you, because they form the basis of your interests also. And we had such an extremely, I think it was a very useful day today for all of us, because what we take back home is not just that follow your routine surgeries, but at this time when we have less surgeries, I think it's the time to innovate. Like Dr. Steve Charles and so many other speakers have said today that it's really important to utilize your time now, and there's so many different things which we can innovate. And even our chief guest, thanks to him, he gave us a wonderful insight on what our future also holds during this time. I'd like to also thank Dr. Schultz and Dr. Saiba, Dr. Vaibhav, Dr. Aditya, and Dr. All of you have done such a wonderful job in coordinating everything. And my sincere thanks to RC once again. I think RC did a wonderful job. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
I'd like to add a few words to this, that it's a matter of pride that you all have come and joined us, and that you have been able to give us an opportunity to listen to you. We want to form a group of you all together. We would like to meet again after a month or so and take up another topic. This time we're looking at ocular therapeutics. And what is your opinion in anterior segment, posterior segment of the current eye drug regime that we have? What needs to be done to improve the medications, and your thoughts? I'd like those of you who are interested to give us your topics, so that a month from now we can meet again and discuss ocular therapeutics with some fun. This time we're planning to bring a Hollywood star and a Bollywood star to join us. So get ready for some dancing. And thank you very much once again. Have a nice weekend. And this is the first webinar without any pharmaceutical support. And the next one hopefully will be the same. So we are going to pool in resources, and we're going to have this together with Steve, with Dr. Arsia, Dr. Pierre, and we want one flow to come up with some good concepts so that the doctor can see the patients better. Thank you, Anita.